Alrighty, ready?
Yeah.
Welcome in everyone to the Batflip Podcast. My name is Damien here with Matt, and this week we're going to be bringing you a basically like an injury update from the past few weeks. We haven't really gone over some major injuries that have happened, and we had a few that happened this week as well. We'll talk about and preview a little bit of the Rickwood Field game that happens this Thursday night between the Cardinals and Giants, and then we have an MLB umpire that has been disciplined and is currently suspended so far this season for illegal gambling, which is always fun. We've talked about that here in length early in this season, but we have another gambling scandal. But before we get into all that, Matt, how are you doing this week?
I am doing pretty good. Had a nice week. In the baseball world, my Braves have seemed to maybe start turning a corner. So hopefully that continues, and just everything's been fine. We missed you last week, Damien. How are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing. I was sick last week, so I'm doing a little bit better. I can actually talk. That would not have been pretty last week. You guys trying to listen to me there, but it was. I don't want to say it was a good week because of what we'll talk about here in a second. For me, couple injuries there on the baseball front, but everything else went well. Hope everyone had a good Father's Day weekend this past weekend. Um, and obviously, you see, we're missing David this week. He had some family stuff come up, so we're going to hold down the fort for him, and he'll be back with us next week. But um, why don't we just go ahead and start and jump into the injuries? I don't want to jump to these first ones, but uh, over the series this weekend against the Kansas City Royals, the Dodgers had a couple high-profile injuries. First off, being Yoshinobu Yamamoto had to leave his start after 2 innings, and his velocity was down about a mile and a half, 2 miles an hour. And it come out that he has had a rotator cuff strain. It's not season ending at this point, but obviously it's going to take a little bit of time to heal that one up. And then in yesterday's game, in the eighth inning, Mookie Betts took a 98-mile-an-hour fastball off the hand and ended up having a fractured hand, and it looks like he's going to be out somewhere in the range of 6 to 8 weeks as well. And I would probably assume Yamamoto is probably 8+ weeks around his with the rotator cuff strain. So a couple big injuries for the team that's leading the NL West right now.
Yeah, it's a big deal. The one thing about the Dodgers this year, if they have a weakness, it's that after you get past their top 3 or 4 guys in their lineup, which are all very, very elite players, they've really struggled at the bottom of their lineup. So some of the depth that they have is not this. It's not like it was at one time where it was like every single guy in that lineup was just mashing. Like they used to have, you could just throw a Kike Hernandez or Chris Taylor in there, and they'd hit for like a 130 WRC plus while your player's out, and then they come back and everything's fine. This year it hadn't really been that way. They've had a little bit of a revolving door, especially in the outfield with, the center field situation's been a revolving door. And then obviously they already had, some struggles in the infield with Gavin Lux and Mookie having to play shortstop and all that stuff. So, it'll be interesting to see how they handle that injury. I do think that's a pretty big deal. 6 to 8 weeks is a long time, but he will be returning in plenty of time to kind of get right in September, get back in a rhythm, and be ready for the playoffs, which I'm sure the Dodgers will be in. So it's not the end of the world, but 6 to 8 weeks for Betts is not great. And then Yamamoto's one that, rotator cuff strain. Anytime you deal with any of those, shoulder ish injuries, it's definitely a concern. Um, and Yamamoto has been a guy who came over and has adjusted seamlessly on the mound. This has been a little bit of a concern from when he was coming over from Japan. It's just that he's not the biggest guy. He's kind of stocky, and he's not like he's not your typical. He's 5'10". He's not your typical like hard throwing, you know, monster out there. And there's just been some concern, that he's gonna have some of these issues at some point. So hopefully this is just a random freak thing and he never has anything again. But missing it's gonna be a little while for him too. I mean, I think Dave Roberts said just quote sometime, but it's not when they say, "Oh yeah, it's not season ending," that usually means he's going to be out a while. It's just
Yeah.
So, and I think the Dodgers pitching depth is a little bit better than I gave it credit for coming into the season. Some of their young guys have stepped up a little bit, and then some of their depth arms have been pretty good. So I don't think it's the end of the world there either. But you definitely need Yamamoto to be right in the playoffs for you to have for you to do what you want to do and win the World Series. So two huge injuries here. It'll be interesting to see if there's any kind of if they pivot a little bit into how they address the offense at the trade deadline, knowing that they're going to be missing bets for a month or so after the deadline, and
Yeah.
because there's a bunch of places they could add, and it'll be interesting to see if that changes kind of what they target.
Yeah, I mean, and like you mentioned, they've dealt with some stuff already. Like Max Muncy has been on the IL for probably, I think, 3 or 4 weeks now at this point with an oblique strain as well. They made a trade for Kevin Biggio to kind of bring somebody else in to help play that point. But now you're going to be having Gavin Lux, Miguel Rojas, and like Kevin Biggio be the bottom half of your order right now for LA. So that's going to, obviously, that's not going to be pretty great. So it's going to be interesting, like you said, to see if Andrew Friedman decides to be more aggressive at the deadline. I mean, they had already been, rumored like, hey, they're going to look for a shortstop to move Mookie back to second, but now you're gonna that's a more pressing need. And the pitching side, it's a little bit better because they're getting Bobby Miller back this week. Kershaw is starting near rehab games as well, so he's probably about a month away. So at least they're going to have that little bit of depth. And the breakout of Gavin Stone has really been the thing that's really helped them this year. But losing, Yamamoto and then a guy who is probably one of the front runners for MVP is definitely not a great start so far for the Dodgers.
They need a bubble wrap glass now at this point.
Yeah, they do. But let's jump over to the Houston Astros because they have a couple high-profile injuries as well. One is less serious than the other, but that's Kyle Tucker. He has been on a tear this year, one of the best players. He's probably in the running for AL MVP if it wasn't for Aaron Judge right now. But he fell the ball off his shin. What was it, last Tuesday or Wednesday? And had to be put on the IL. And it seems like he was supposed to return at the 10-day mark, but then now they're saying that doesn't seem like it's going to be likely and that it's most likely going to get pushed back at least another week or so. And then, on their pitching side, they've lost Christian Javier to Tommy John surgery now, which is a big loss for that rotation, which we'd already talked about, had already been struggling a little bit. And then on top of already losing Christian Javier, now Justin Verlander has a neck issue. He had to be scratched from his start this weekend. It sounds like he should be able to pitch again on this upcoming weekend or later this week. But again, I mean, what is he, 42, 43 now, Verlander? I mean, you just never know. It could be something that lingers. So a couple pitching injuries and then Kyle Tucker for the Astros so far.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Tucker's a huge deal if he's, for any length of time being out. It does sound like he's probably coming back soon, although they've kind of started to talk about maybe having to put him on the rehab assignment. But,
yeah,
I mean, a 3.2 WAR is, in just 60 games is remarkable. He's having a career year, and this is a guy who's already an all-star caliber player. I mean, he's got a 20% walk rate almost and a 16% strikeout rate. So he's walking a pretty decent amount more than he's striking out. He's hit 19 home runs. I mean, the guy's just a machine at the plate right now. And, hopefully he gets back without missing too much time. Because like you said, he would be a runaway front runner for MVP if it wasn't for Aaron Judge being Aaron Judge. So he's been awesome. And hopefully he gets back very soon.
Yeah, it sucks for the Astros there. Tucker's one of the most fun guys to watch, so definitely hope he's back soon. But let's jump over to the Baltimore Orioles now, and they really have. Would you have something?
Oh, I was just going to mention on Javier, just Christian Javier getting Tommy John. I mean, he's had a really disappointing season this year, but his velocity was down a pretty good bit, and I wonder if this is something that he's maybe had a slight tear or something for a little while, because he was quite obviously not himself, and it sucks to see him go down. But that was just something that I kind of noticed with him. And then Justin Verlander with the neck thing, he's kind of been not great so far this year either. But you know, with him being 41, I know he's not going to miss much time, but with him being 41, having some kind of nagging neck thing is definitely a concern, regardless of whether he's going to make his next start or not. So I just wanted to hit on those two as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about Javier maybe potentially having something and dealing with something in the elbow already. I mean, that's a perfect transition to the guy we were getting ready to talk about in Baltimore with Kyle Bradish. This is a guy who had some UCL injury concern this offseason, decided not to get Tommy John, was really delayed going into the year, had come back and had actually looked like he had avoided some major injury, had looked pretty decent actually. And then this week, his velocity in his last start, I believe it was Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday, it tanked. It was down like 5 miles an hour or something like that. And he was seen shaking his elbow on after pitching or after certain pitches and stuff. So it was revealed that he also has a sprained UCL again. No word if he's going to get Tommy John yet. It sounds like he's probably going to try and do the whole rest and rehab thing again, which it's not. I don't think it's a great sign if you tried that earlier this year and you came back, but then it didn't really last that long. You might be better off just getting it, but that would be a huge loss for a rotation that already lost John Means again. Grayson Rodriguez has been dealing with his own injuries. I think Dean Kramer's on the IL as well. So that's that Baltimore pitching staff was looking to be pretty fierce coming into this year, and they've dealt with a lot of injuries of their own. So hopefully Bradish doesn't have to undergo Tommy John and is able to make his way back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was absolutely, he had that breakout year last year, and this year he was even better when he was pitching in 39 innings, had a 2.75 ERA, a 2.49 FIP. He was awesome this year, and it really sucks to see him get hurt, because we were hoping that this might be behind him. And like you said, I mean, their starting rotation right now, I mean, it doesn't look great. Like, you know, Albert Suarez is starting games for him right now. I mean, Cade Povich has started some games for them lately. I mean, I know Cade Povich was a pretty decently rated prospect, but those guys are really young. And Cole Irvin's been one of their better pitchers, and I just don't know if that's going to be sustained very long. So, obviously they're super thankful that they've got Corbin Burns and Grayson Rodriguez right now is available. So, but they're definitely going to be a team that's going to be in the running at the deadline for more starting pitching. And I know there's already been rumors about them maybe being a landing spot for Garrett Crochet, which would be another injury concern just because of his history and the lack of innings he's thrown. But he's been really good. So I definitely think the Orioles are gonna have to address this at the deadline.
Yeah, and it's even been a little bit of hinted at too that they could potentially look into a center field option too. And
yeah,
the White Sox have one of those too. So if there's a farm system that can pull off a blockbuster for Luis Robert and Garrett Crochet, I would say it's Baltimore's very high on the list of teams that you probably want to deal with.
Yeah, that would be an insane trade if they traded for both of those guys at the same
mean,
time.
Baltimore's got some guys though. I mean, you got
they can do it.
Yeah, very easily.
That would just be like the huge trade.
Yeah, I mean, right now should be the time that Baltimore goes for it too.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a year that they should do it, it should be right now. So they're going to be one of the more exciting teams to watch, because everyone thought last year they might push the chips in, going into the deadline, and their like big deadline deal was Jack Flaherty, and everyone was like kind of real let down. Everyone thought it was going to be like Dylan Cease or even Corbin Burns at that point, who they then ended up trading for. But it's going to be exciting to see what they got cooking up, especially with the new owner now, who might be willing to push the chips in a little bit more.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that they got 2023 Jack Flaherty, not 2024 Jack Flaherty,
right?
too. So he's another one that's been really good this year.
Yeah, he has been. So let's jump over to Arizona, which we didn't talk about Zach Gallen at the time when it happened, but he had a hamstring injury. He's missed some time already. It sounds like he should be able to return soon. I think he's already throwing sim games and should be looking at a rehab assignment here relatively in the next couple days. But the big one that happened, I think it was just a couple days ago, is Corbin Carroll. I think it's an oblique strain, right?
So
Or
yeah,
something, or a light, something to do with the oblique. He was seen after he threw a ball in from the outfield, seen grabbing his side, like it kind of twinged up on him. Doesn't I don't think it was so severe, but still a little bit something that's always kind of scary on those side issues.
yeah. First off, Gallon missing Gallon's been a big deal for them. That rotation has had Gallon out, Kelly out, Rodriguez out, and Montgomery has not been himself. So that rotation that we thought was going to be really, really good with all the additions they made, plus having Gallon and Kelly, they've been missing like everybody almost. So that's been really unfortunate for them. And hopefully Gallon does come back soon. But he was having a really solid year yet again, a 3.12 ERA and 57 innings. So I'm sure when he comes back, he will be Zach Gallen as long as he's healthy. The thing that the Corbin Carroll thing is really, it sounds like he's not going to miss any time from this, but you wonder, if this could linger a little bit. He said he felt a little bit of a minor pull when he threw the ball in, like you mentioned, but it wasn't severe. They did an MRI and didn't really believe that it was anything really major, so they took him back they returned him to the team. Basically, he didn't go on the IL, but he's already a guy that I don't think he's healthy. I don't think he's been healthy
Yeah,
all year. I mean, the shoulder issues he had that shoulder issue in the minor leagues that zapped his power for a year, and then he got it back after some time. But he had that same shoulder issue late last year, and his power just has been zapped since then. And this year, in 70 games with very similar plate discipline number, actually better plate discipline numbers than last year, um, in 70 games, 305 plate appearances, he's only hit 2 home runs. And the max exit velocity's down, the barrel rate's down, the hard hit rate's way down. Average exit velocity is down a pretty decent amount. Like he's really, really struggled at the plate this year. I do think he's been a little bit unlucky, but that's been a big problem. And obviously adding a oblique that's not 100%, even if it doesn't cause him to miss time, to that is not good. So the Diamondbacks really need Corbin Carroll to find a gear. They're not, because the NL is so bad this year. They are not entirely out of the playoff race right now, even though they
yeah.
haven't had a good year so far. But they've got to have Corbin Carroll be healthy and really take off in the second half of the season, because this production from him is just not going to cut it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've mentioned the whole Corbin Carroll power, drain has really been an issue this year. With that shoulder injury, and it really happened middle of last year. And if you look at that from that point on, the numbers took a downward spiral since then. But the oblique, it's just another thing, and it's with those side injuries, even if it's a little something now, like you aren't sure, and they take forever to heal themselves. Um, I mean, it's like a thing like I can jump back and just relate to it. It's because Max Muncy, his was supposed to be like, hey, he's going to be on the IL for 10 days. Like the minimum stint, he'll be back. We're going on close to a month. And he was on like Fair Territory this last week talking to them. And he was just like, yeah, I literally, like, there's nothing I can do. Just sit here and hope it gets better.
Yeah.
So I really hope that they don't push Carroll a little bit too much and it becomes a bigger issue, because those things you just never know how long it's going to take to be right. I almost wish that like they would just put him on the 10-day and say, hey, like at least take 10 days.
Yeah.
Um, and then look into the shoulder stuff, because that is a big deal. And he was one of their catalysts last year, and I think part of the reason why they haven't been so good this year is because of his struggles, specifically. So hopefully it all works out though, and hopefully they both get back and can help Arizona stay into that playoff race there. But let's jump over to another team that is kind of fighting to stay in the playoff race a little bit. I mean, not really, but they've struggled in the division this year, which we all thought they would be the runaway team, and that's your Atlanta Braves, Matt. And the big injury that they had happened this week, I mean, we already know about Ronald Acuna Jr. tearing his ACL and being out for the year. We know about Spencer Strider and his UCL, having to get Tommy John. But Michael Harris, who was their center fielder, he had a grade 2 hamstring strain. Sounds like he's going to be out for a good bit too. Hamstring strains are another one kind of like the oblique. They just take time. And a grade 2 is usually 4 to 8 weeks, somewhere right around there.
I think they said 1 to 2 months. Yeah.
Yeah, so about 4 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, it's not good. The Braves have really struggled offensively this year so far, which is shocking because even without Acuna, like the way that they played last year offensively with the same guys, and it's not like the guys have all aged, was like it's just shocking to see how bad they've struggled. Especially Austin Riley's really struggled badly most of the year. He finally got going a little bit this weekend. He hit 3 home runs over the weekend. He's had a double tonight. He looks to be getting back into form, but losing Acuna obviously was a huge blow. And then after that, you still kind of felt like the outfield wasn't a massive issue. You didn't really like the fact that you're going to have to play Kelenic against lefties every time. But if you have Harris, Kelenic, who's having a pretty good year, he's up to a 110 WRC plus on the season. So he's been pretty good lately. If you have Harris, Kelenic, and then figure out, I guess, Duvall, who's really struggled this year, but you've got at least a veteran to play the other corner outfield spot. You feel like you can still compete with that, at least and make it to the trade deadline. But then you lose Michael Harris, and it is you're down your 2 all-star outfielders now and Michael Harris is going to be down for a pretty good while. So it's really unfortunate. He was having a rough season, honestly, so far, but he was starting to turn a little bit of a corner, and it sucks to see him get hurt. Obviously 1 to 2 months. The Braves are for sure, locked. I wouldn't call them locked into the playoffs at this point, but because they have struggled and they do have these injuries, but they're pretty comfortably a playoff team right now. So, you hope that Michael Harris can, rest that up and get healthy. And, it's unfortunate. And the Braves at the deadline, we're already probably going to target an outfielder, and it might just add some urgency to do that at the earlier than wait until the deadline. I mean, they've been running out Ramon Laureano and Forrest Wall and that, JT Martinez. It's like that they really just don't have major leaguers to play the outfield right now. They're down to replacement level guys. So and then AJ Minter also being banged up. He had a hip injury. He was probably, I think everyone kind of assumed he'd come back like right at the end of his 15 days, but it sounds like he might be a little bit longer, but he doesn't seem to be like, it's not like he's going to miss the rest of the season. I would assume he's back somewhat soon. And, but obviously everyone's going to add relievers, and the Braves will be no different in that. And then I'd also just to mention, they had called up Hurston Waldrop, who was their first round pick last year. He's a top 100 prospect, and he just went on the IL today with elbow inflammation. So we haven't heard anything about like potential Tommy John surgery or something, but this is a guy they just recently called up that's now out. So, and I would assume out for a while with it being any kind of elbow issue for a guy like him. So definitely unfortunate. The Braves just have not been able to be healthy all year. And, when they have been healthy, they've had guys underperforming. So, we'll see if they're able to really turn it on here soon. But Michael Harris being out is not going to help that.
Yeah, not at all. And he had struggled a little bit to begin this year, but there's the potential still there to easily turn that around. So hopefully he's able to get back soon and help them, because obviously losing Acuna, that doesn't help. And now losing your second outfielder, it doesn't make things go great. That's for sure. So let's jump over to the last big injury that we're going to talk about, which just happened last night, and that is that Yankees first baseman Anthony Rizzo had a collision at first base, fell and broke his arm, so he'll be out about 4 to 6 weeks too. Rizzo had really been struggling ever since his concussion that he had got last year in his collision with Tatis, but just another injury to add on there, and the Yankees, they've been playing good, and we'll talk about a return that they have here upcoming this week. But to lose Rizzo, that's still a big loss.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the Yankees have really they've been very good, but they've been very top heavy with Aaron Judge and Juan Soto carrying so much of the load for them. But Anthony Rizzo has been legitimately pretty terrible this year. 84 WRC plus, playing first base. He's been worth minus point four WAR on the season. So you kind of think this isn't a huge loss for them, but he's also a clubhouse leader. And I think the thing too is like he's one of the guys. He's got enough upside to where you really need him to kind of in order to add some depth to your lineup. That's the bottom of the lineup's not great. In order to add that depth, you really need Anthony Rizzo to play well and to he was kind of that guy that he could potentially turn it around and just add another pretty good bat into there. But yeah, it's been rough for him. He's been you know he's had a rough season, and then now 4 to 6 weeks out with a broken arm. I mean, it's not good.
Yeah, it's not, and it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing. I would guess DJ LeMahieu would play more first base.
That's what their plan is for now. I would not be surprised at all if they address first base at the deadline. It sounds like
Yeah,
there will probably be a couple of decent first basemen available, and I don't know that the Mets will trade with the Yankees, but with Alonso maybe ending up maybe not available because the Mets have played pretty well lately and they're kind of on the fringe of the playoff race, but I don't know what they're going to end up doing, but there's probably going to be a few first basemen out there. So you look at maybe them adding and thinking, hey, Rizzo is out and he's just really struggled, so we might go ahead and just add somebody for the stretch run, make that our big addition
yeah,
this year. So I wouldn't be shocked if they did that, but um, definitely unfortunate. And this season just it feels like the Anthony Rizzo era. In Major League Baseball, it just feels like he's getting close to the end of his career. It really
yeah.
does. I hate to say that, but he's been a great player for a long time. But I just don't know. I mean, I just don't know how much longer he's going to be playing, and teams willing to give him a shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because, like I said, going into his when he got that concussion last year, he was really, really good. And it really, I mean, he played with the symptoms of that for a couple months and then went down. And then I don't know what it is this year, but he hadn't seemed right either. So it's going to be interesting to see the way he comes back. And like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if the Yankees were to make some move there at the first base, position. It'd be kind of hard to get somebody who's going to be like a primary first baseman, just because like if Rizzo, when he does come back, obviously you're going to try and want to get whoever you acquire still get at bats too, and you don't have the DH spot available with Stanton. Um, so like going and getting somebody like a Pete, or I mean, obviously that wouldn't stop you because Pete's a lot better than Rizzo, but if it was like somebody like a Josh Bell or something along those lines, like to help fill in now, who's solid, can put a bat in that lineup, but he won't be able to stay there consistent. It's just gonna be weird to see. Um, I wouldn't wonder if they maybe even look at maybe a third base option and then have DJ be your like utility slash first baseman while Rizzo's out.
Yeah, and
That'd be interesting.
that would not shock me either. I mean, they need a corner infielder probably, and you know, and honestly, I mean, like you say, I mean, if you could get somebody that's a really good first baseman, I mean, the way Rizzo's performing, it's tough to bench a veteran like that, but just because of their clubhouse aura and stuff.
Yeah,
But at a certain point, you're the Yankees. This is you're in an all-in year, and you've got a hole in your lineup at first base,
yeah,
and you can't just keep running out a guy because he's a respected veteran. So, at some point, even if he does come back, like you just don't feel. good about that position right now. And I don't know if you feel good about DJ LeMahieu there either, because he's
Yeah.
dealt with his own injuries and underperformance, and he's aging as well. So you might need a third baseman and a first baseman.
I mean, it's all fair concerns for sure. But, one bright spot that the Yankees do have coming is the return of Garrett Cole. His rehab has been complete, and he is going to make his return on Wednesday. I believe it's against the Orioles. But he's looked pretty good in his rehab outings. We talked about it, heading into the year. If they were able to stay afloat until they got Garrett Cole back, well, they've been one of the best teams, and now the Cy Young Award winner is going to make his return this week.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. We've kind of said before the season, the Yankees just need to hold on until Garrett Cole can return, in that rotation. And once he returns, you've kind of got that anchor, and you feel really good about your top arms in that rotation, and him and Cortez. And then you would hope that one of Stroman or Rodon ended up performing well this year. And well, Stroman and Rodon have just been okay, but then you got Luis Gill, who's been insane this year. So you're starting to look at a pretty formidable rotation once again for the Yankees once Cole gets back, and hopefully he's 100% ready to go. But that's a big deal for them to get him back, and I mean that team looks really really good right now.
Yeah, I mean, LA just played them, and they fought really tough during that series, and getting Garrett Cole back. I mean, it can't be said enough how big of an addition that is to this team right now,
Yeah,
especially like with you're always concerned about when or if Carlos Rodon is going to break down, or when that you know shoulder soreness or something's going to pop up. And then Stroman, he's been solid, but and then also the way that Luis Gil has been pitching. I mean, he's a rookie and he's been pitching this great, but you're still just worried about, like, is it going to meet regression at some point? And to get that steady rotation, or that steady guy at the top of the rotation back in, it's a massive, massive deal.
yeah, and not to mention Carlos Rodon and or especially Marcus Stroman, their metrics have been really rough. Rodon's have been okay, but Marcus Stroman's metrics have been really rough. They're probably due for some regression, and Garrett Cole coming back covers that up. So
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about a team that we were talked about. One team who has kind of held on and performed really well while they've been missing one of their star players. Well, let's jump to another team who's performed really well while missing one of their star players, and that's the Philadelphia Phillies, who have been the best team in baseball so far
I
in the
think
year.
so.
And they've done it with, I think, what's it been, a month and a half or 2 months without Trey Turner. And he actually ended up returning today from his hamstring. I know it's been about a month at least.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, he's been out. He's only played 33 games so
yeah,
far this year. This is his 34th night. He's got a couple hits tonight. It's a big deal for the Phillies. Trey Turner's performed well so far this year. He had a 145 WRC plus before he went down. He had a high BABIP, but even if you kind of account for that coming down some, he's still in really good shape as a hit at the plate. Obviously he adds that elite speed threat at the top of your lineup as well. Um, very very solid, very good player, and they've missed him. They need him back, so getting him back is a big deal. I think the Phillies are probably about to play a little bit of a tougher, group of opponents here soon. So they need all hands on deck to continue to play the way they've played so far.
yeah,
So getting Trey Turner back is very big help for that lineup that's been really good, but they've been kind of carried a little bit by their pitching too.
yeah, for sure. One thing I want to mention too is just shout out Edmundo Sosa
Yeah,
for the job
been
he's done
solid.
since Trey Turner went down. He has a 136 WRC plus this year with 277 batting average, 338 on base. He's slugging 500.
Yeah,
Like he 1.8 WAR in the 41 games so far. He's almost matched his career high in a WAR in a season, and that happened in 2021 when he was with St. Louis and he had 2 WAR. Like he had a great stretch there when Trey Turner was out to help bridge that gap for the Phillies. So I want to shout him out because that could have been really really bad for the Phillies. Um, not having that consistent presence there. So one other guy that has came back and just decided that he has hit like 274 homers in the last like week is Royce Lewis of the Minnesota Twins. We talked about his breakout playoff run last year, and then he had started this year and he hit a homer in his first at bat, and then he doubled in his second at bat, and then second at bat running to second, he hurt his hamstring. And he's came back, and all he's done is hit more homers and just be a massive, massive uplift to that offense in Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, Royce Lewis is a super talented player. Obviously, he was a former number one overall pick, and the injuries just held him down for so long. He finally gets somewhat of like a cup of coffee in the big leagues that was still hampered by injury last
Yeah,
year, but he was able to play 60 games and had a great 60 game sample last year. You felt pretty good about him coming into this year after he hit 15 home runs in 58 games and had a 155 WRC plus. And I mean, in the games he's played, he's only played 12 games at this point, but like in the games he's played, he's been unbelievable. 7 home runs in 12 games, 1.2 WAR. I mean, he's walking almost as much as he's striking out. So far, obviously for him, in his sake, it's a very small sample size at this point, just because he missed so much time. But he has been absolutely awesome so far this year. So, very, very good news to see him back out there and performing like he should. And he's going to help the Twins an absolute ton. That lineup needed a little bit more help, and we'll talk about a guy that's doing well in that lineup right now here in a little bit. But they needed as much as they can get, and Royce Lewis is that guy right now.
yeah, for sure. He's been one of the most fun players to watch just in general, and I really really hope that he can get that injury bug off of him and he can continue to play because he looks special right now, like special special. Uh, so we'll continue to track how he does, but let's jump over and talk about some of the other stuff that we had for this episode, and let's start with the Rickwood Field game, which, if you don't know, Rickwood Field is the oldest ballpark still in America today. It was built in what, 1910, for the Birmingham Black Barons of the Negro Leagues, and the Giants and Cardinals are going to go play there Thursday night. Matt, obviously, you know a little bit more about this because it's just right down the road from your house. So let us know what what you know about Rickwood Field and the history behind it, and then kind of what you're looking forward to see from the game between the Cardinals and Giants there.
Yeah, this is a really cool event. I'm super excited. I've grew up, and I still live about 15 minutes from Rickwood Field. It's a really cool historic ballpark. In Birmingham, and it's not in the best area of town, and it kind of, it hadn't crumbled, but it hadn't been kept up extremely well. And I'm super excited that MLB has decided to come in and make this landmark place an event, and to rejuvenate it a little bit, and it's so cool to see. I grew up. I went to the Birmingham Barons, the Double A team for the White Sox. They play what they call the Rickwood Classic every year, where they play at Rickwood Field and they wear the throwback uniforms from from the Negro Leagues teams. The opposing team always does that as well, wearing the throwback when they come in. And I used to go to that every so often when I was a kid, and it was really cool to see. It's a cool stadium. It's such a throwback type place. It looks like something you would see in like one of those movies that's about 1920s baseball or something. It really does have that feel to it. It's going to be a really cool event. I can't wait to see what MLB does with it. They've done a great job over the past few years of these like one-off special games like this, where they did the Field of Dreams game and they did the College World Series game, the Little League World Series game. They've done some of these things, and it's been really cool. So I'm super excited. Obviously, the you know the Giants and the Cardinals have a good history with the Negro Leagues, as the Cardinals had Satchel Paige, and and you look at the Giants with Willie Mays, who's from Alabama. So that's a cool thing to see. these teams get selected for this, and I just think it's an awesome event. I wish I was able to go to it, but I think tickets were like a lottery, which I could have entered as an Alabama resident, but they were going to be like $2,000 a piece or something, so I couldn't have done it. But it was I'm really excited to see how this game goes, and just it's very cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool moment, and I love when MLB does these little one-off things. We have the Omaha Classic where they always, or not the Omaha Classic, but the Little League World Series Classic,
Yeah.
where they always go and play there. When they did the Field of Dreams game was really fun. And we see them start going international now with the Mexico series and the London series, and we had the Korea series too. But to go to some of these historic ballparks in America and play in those that have a lot of history behind them and a lot of meaning, those just seem a little bit more special.
Oh yeah, no
So
doubt.
I'm excited for that. So that'll be Thursday night. I believe, was it like 6:15
6:15.
Central?
I think Fox has it right.
Yeah, so it'll be on Fox again. So it'll be at 7:15 Eastern time.
Yep.
On Fox there. So be sure to tune in for that one because it'll be a lot of fun. So let's jump over to the last kind of big story that we have in this week, and that is that Pat Hoiberg, who's an MLB umpire, has been basically suspended all year in one of another kind of gambling situation, a gambling investigation. It's from the little information that we do have, it doesn't seem like any games that he was actually umpiring in had been affected at all. But the information is really kind of scarce so far. But he hasn't been umpiring at all this year, not even through spring training, which I'm surprised we never picked up on because he's one of the better umpires. He was notorious for, I believe, when we were talking pre-shows, the Astros Phillies World Series, where he had called like the perfect game behind home plate, didn't miss a strike or ball call. And he, like I said, he's one of the notorious good umpires that always has a high percentage. So it really sucks. Hopefully this isn't turning into a bigger issue, and maybe that they could just, something's figured out where it wasn't on the baseball or whatever, and he's able to get back because, like I said, he's one of the better ones. You don't want to lose one of your better umpires after we've had a big uproar about umpiring the last couple of years.
Yeah, you're 100% right about that. I mean, I was absolutely shocked when Pat Hoiberg was the guy that came out with this because, you kind of talked about, you had kind of brought up that there was a rumor going around about maybe an umpire being involved in something, and that was. I would have never guessed Pat Hoiberg. It's hard to, and I don't think Pat Hoiberg was throwing games or anything. It's hard to throw games when you don't miss any calls. So, I mean, I don't think he was, and what he has said, his team, his group, whoever's representing him has said is that he didn't have anything to do with baseball betting at all. Not games that he was doing, but also just no baseball. And I mean, I think the umpires definitely need to be held to a higher standard when it comes to gambling, and just because you can have, if players attempt to throw games, it's very, very significant and it's a big story and they should be banned from the game if they find out about it. But it's a little bit of a bigger deal if umpires are
Yeah.
involved because they can directly, I mean, one player not playing at their best they could definitely affect a game, but if an umpire is intentionally steering the game in one direction, it can like just determine the outcome and just over, absolutely. So, obviously, you just you don't want to have any risk of an umpire getting involved with sketchy people doing gambling, and my assumption is that he probably was doing gambling on other sports, but it was probably a similar type thing to the Otani translator where it was with
Illegal
maybe an
bookies.
illegal bookie or something that he got involved with. So that's what I would guess, but I hate to see this story come out, and I'll tell you, if it does come out that he didn't bet on baseball and he he was just involved with the MLB just looking into him because they found out he had been betting on other stuff, or he was involved with an illegal bookmaker or something. You know, I don't like that, but I don't think he should be just banned. But if you
Yeah.
look at I think, and my prediction is that in the future, in the not too distant future, and it might not be baseball, one of the big four sports is going to have a massive gambling scandal at some point soon with
Yeah.
either a superstar player that gets caught betting on games, or a referee, umpire, whatever sport you're talking about gets called. The whole online sports betting thing. I enjoy the fact that it exists because I think that sometimes if you have a game you don't have any stake in, if you put like $5 on the game or something, it gives you something to root
Yeah.
for and it makes the game a lot more fun to watch. But at the same time, it's also made it. There's also a lot of negatives in the fact that it's made it so difficult or so easy for people involved in the sport to get involved in the gambling and pick up. And a lot of them, they might not start gambling on baseball, but they can get addicted to it, and
Yep.
it's just it could be a big mess. So, you know, hopefully this ends up being something that was somewhat of a misunderstanding and he didn't do anything to affect baseball games. And he can come back because he's a very good umpire, but definitely a big story, and it could be even bigger depending on what comes out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I hope it's a misunderstanding, but man, you would think that like if this was something that they were dealing with since before spring training, and if it was just a misunderstanding, they would have had something figured out by now. Um, at least with it. So I don't know. We'll see as more information, but like you said, it's. I mean, I think we kind of all saw that like at some point the gambling stuff was going to get to a time when it's maybe a little too involved, where it has a little bit too much to do with things, and it can let that slippery slope go. But like you mentioned, it's fun to do. I mean, it's kind of the same thing as fantasy. I mean, it helps you stay invested. Um, I'm not even like in California. I'm not even able to regular gamble, but I can do like the daily fantasy stuff, which that helps me even just stay invested into more games. And this is a sport where I do podcasts on. Where like I'm already invested to watching games, but it makes you even more invested. But you just hope that it gets to the point where something's figured out to where these people don't directly affect games. And I'm not that Pat Holberg did, but just in general. Um, and that this really just is one big misunderstanding for him, at least. So hopefully that's the last betting thing we ever have to talk about on this channel, but I highly doubt it will be. But since we've been doing a lot of other things the past month or so, we really haven't talked about like players of the week or anything. So Matt and I we wanted to mention a couple players each, a couple pitchers and a couple hitters each, just over the last 30 days, or that we should highlight to mention of who's had a good month or so, and just since we haven't really been doing it, just highlight a couple of people who have, while that time we've missed it, has been performing pretty well. So, Matt, who'd you pick for your first hitter?
So my first hitter I picked was Aaron Judge. We kind of mentioned it earlier how he had been helping carry the Yankees along with Juan Soto, and on this season, Aaron Judge has been incredible. He had a really slow start for Aaron Judge standards, a slow start over the first month or so, but since then, really over the last 2 months, he has just been absolutely like unstoppable. On the season right now, or over the last month, he has a 354 average, a 458 on base, and a 869 slugging with 14 home runs over those last 27 games, which is just absolutely insane. He's still playing good defense and running the bases pretty well. He's put up 2.6 WAR in the last 30 games. Um, and he on the season now has 5 WAR already, and we're less than halfway through the season. So, he's on pace for another 10 WAR season like he put up in 2022. And, his home run pace isn't quite the 2022 pace at this point, I don't think, but his projections have him hitting over 50 home runs on the season. So, yet again for the third time. And I don't know how many players have hit 50 home runs for 3 seasons in their career. It could be an interesting stat to. I didn't look it up for the show, but that could be an interesting stat to look at. But um, this guy is absolutely out of his mind right now, and he's starting to put up he got such a late start as a 25-year-old rookie that the kind of the Hall of Fame talk hasn't really been a big thing with him, but he's starting to make a case to where he could end up being a future Hall of Famer if he can continue through his like age 34, 35, 36 seasons. At, maybe not at the pace he's at this year, but like at a pace like a 4 to 5 win per season pace. He'll definitely be in that like 60 to 70 WAR category, and I don't know how his counting stats will look to voters, but he'll be definitely in that realm. And I mean, I would be shocked to see him get to 500 home runs either, which would be
Yeah,
pretty remarkable considering the fact that he's only played 908 games in his career at this point,
yeah,
which is not a lot of time considering the 8 years in the big leagues too. So Aaron Judge has been awesome. And he needed, I know it's the most obvious shout out ever at this point, but he needed the shout out because he's just been on an absolute tear.
yeah. He's been really really incredible after, especially after that slow start you mentioned. It seemed like every other day we were getting an Aaron Judge homer basically. So I think you made a good point. I mean, he's going to be getting close to 50 WAR this year. By the end of this year, he's going to be getting close to that 300 homer mark. I mean, he might even be able to hit it. He needs 27 more. It wouldn't be the most insane thing if we're talking about over 50 homers this season. So those are going to be interesting numbers to see. But at age 32, doing that, I think like what you mentioned, I think he's easily going to be on his way to start putting up potential Hall of Fame numbers if he just stays at least any bit consistent. And especially playing for the New York Yankees, that helps a little bit more too. So the first hitter that I went with though was I kind of picked one under the radar name and then one guy who is kind of bouncing back that I'm kind of happy to see. So I'll start with the guy who's bouncing back, and that's Carlos Correa. Over his past 27 games, he's put up a 171 WRC plus, a 1.6 WAR, hitting like 350, which is up there with close to Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, batting average stats. Um, he has almost 380 on base, slugging 600. And so far this year, he's put up a 147 WRC plus, 2.4 WAR. And if you look at the WRC plus, this has been his best season outside of 2017 when obviously Houston made the World Series run, and he was 22 years old. He had a 152 WRC plus that year. But looking at last year, he had a 96 WRC plus, only 2 WAR or 1.9 on the season in 135 games, 18 homers. Only batted 230, and you're looking at his season stats so far this year in 54 games, 308 average, like I mentioned, the 147 WRC plus. He has 2.4 WAR, so already beat his season total from last year in 54 games, and he's looked really, really good. You look at his Savant page, and it's back to looking really red too. So I'm happy for all that Correa, had went through with the foot stuff. Going through the 2 different deals with the Giants and then the Mets, and then having to go back to Minnesota there. And his first free agency being through the lockout, period too. And happy to see that he's finally settling into a team that, he had signed to long-term now and starting to look like that Carlos Correa that we all kind of thought he should be throughout his career.
Yeah, it really is awesome to see Carlos Correa do as well as he is right now. Like you mentioned, there's signed that contract and he had the physicals and the medicals and stuff. And last year he dealt with some injuries, and you're just wondering, is this guy gonna just be a bad contract? Is he gonna be a Chris Bryant type contract where it's just like he can't stay healthy for more than 20 games, and when he's out there, he just looks totally like his body's breaking down on him? But he hasn't been that way this year. He's been awesome.
Yeah.
It's very good to see, and like I said, the Twins looking pretty solid offensively now with him and with Royce Lewis back and just crushing it like he is. So we'll see if they're able to keep it going, but and get help from other guys too. But definitely a good 1-2 punch right now for them.
It also, he has like that Salvador Perez thing to me where like he feels a lot older than he actually is.
He's like
Like
he's like
he's
30,
still
isn't he?
he's 29.
29, yeah.
He's still
He's pretty
29.
young.
Like when you think of Carlos Correa, like I would say like he's 32, 33. He's still only 29.
Yeah.
Like the thing with Salvador Perez, like he's 33 or whatever. And I feel like he's 39. Um, but anyways, so let's jump back to you. Go to your second hitter that you got.
Yeah, so my second hitter I've got is Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez is a guy who it seems like every year he just ends up being good. Um, and he he's just he's so he's just such a he's such a consistent player year to year. And that's what's impressive with him. I think I lost this. Oh, there he is. I was trying to find his stats over the last month, but over the last month, the last 30-ish games, 22 games for him, but the last 30 days, he's hit 310 with a 388 on base and a 678 slugging. That's a 196 WRC plus. Just fantastic numbers. And the one thing that always kind of is interesting to me about about Jose Ramirez is that the way that he like his body type and the way that he is the way that he plays and stuff, it just feels like every time he goes into a little bit of a slump that it's like, okay, this is the year he's cooked, you know.
Yeah,
Like every time he has like a bad like month, it's like, okay, he's actually this finally he's cooked. But and this year it was it was like in the first month, March and April, a 101 WRC plus, which is fine, but like it's not Jose Ramirez. It wasn't great, and then he just has this big run now that he goes on, and he's back to being like a top 10 player in baseball, like he is every year, and it's fun to watch him just because he's so like it's so unexpected with him. So, he's a very good player, and I thought he deserved a shout out just because he had a bad first month, and then since that first month, he's been killing it again.
yeah. He's like you mentioned. He's a player that I think the best way to describe it is he plays really stiff. So it always just looks like every swing is painful, or every swing just kind of like looks like it could be slow, and you're just like, man, like he just doesn't look like somebody who is wildly successful year after year after year after year, and he just consistently produces all the time. So for my second guy, I went with somebody who's kind of broke out this year, another under the radar name. But over the last 30 days per Fangraphs, he is fifth in MLB and hitters in WAR. And that is Heliot Ramos from the San Francisco Giants. In 26 games, he has 8 homers. He has 340 average, 442 on base, 630 slugging for a 197 WRC plus and a 1.8 WAR. He's actually been playing a really good center field for them too. Which has been a position they had really been struggling at. But this has kind of jumped out of nowhere. I mean, Heliot Ramos had been a guy who had a career. Last year, he had played in 25 games, and he had a 47 WRC plus for the Giants, a negative .2 WAR. And then you look at 2022 when he's made his debut. It was only in 9 games, but he had a negative .4 WAR and a negative 12 WRC plus. And you're talking about a guy now who has a 176 WRC plus this season, 2 WAR. He's batting 326 with a 404 on base and 561 slugging. Just a complete breakout at the age of 24 for a Giants team, which they've struggled to develop some of their younger guys throughout the time, and outfield specifically has been an issue for them the past couple of years. And Heliot Ramos, he looks like he's on track to continue doing this, because even if you look at his baseball savant page, like the stuff backs up what he's doing so far. There's a little bit more swing and miss than you would like, but I mean, when you're producing at the level you're producing right now, and a lot of the other numbers back it up for the expected stats, it just shows that it might be sustainable.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's probably not this good, but
Yeah,
the way that he's played so far this year is um you think he's at least, it's definitely a
He could be a
breakout at
regular.
this point. Yeah. Oh yeah, easily. I mean, the way he's played so far,
Yeah,
he looks like a guy who's going to stick as a really good player. So,
yeah,
um,
for sure.
but definitely interesting. Definitely interesting player there.
Yeah. So let's jump over to our pitchers real quick, and we'll make these a little bit quicker as we've already hit the hour mark. But Matt, what do you got for pitching?
Yeah, my first pitcher is a guy that signed a big contract last year with the Blue Jays, and he had a fine year last year, and then this year he started off. He had a okay first month or so. He hadn't His overall numbers for the season aren't great with a 3.56 ERA, but 3.85 FIP. But Chris Bassett, he's been a really top level arm over the last month. He has a 1.20 ERA over the last month, and a 2.45 FIP backs that up. He's having a really good season. He has not given up a home run in his last 5 starts, in his last 30 innings. So definitely a guy that having a good season so far. The Blue Jays desperately need it. Another injury that happened that I don't think we mentioned was, I don't even know if he was in the big leagues, but Alec Manoah, has is now undergoing Tommy John surgery. We didn't mention that earlier. And the Blue Jays, maybe kind of hoped he would kind of figure things out a little bit this year, and obviously that didn't happen, and now he's out. And you've had just that team, just they've got to have the pitching right now, and they got to have people step up because they've struggled. And Chris Bassett's been that guy over the last month. I mean, like I say, a 1.20 ERA is very solid for a month, and we'll see if he's able to keep it going. But good on Chris Bassett, who he's kind of paying off that contract right now.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the Blue Jays need some consistent starting pitching right now, and that's a guy like Bassett will always give you solid innings. But so the guy that I wanted to talk about, we talked about the Houston Astros, struggles in their rotation here a little bit earlier. One guy who really was part of that issue to begin the year was Hunter Brown, but recently, I believe it was the beginning of May, he ended up adding a cutter to his repertoire, and since then he has been really, really good. Um, Over his last, what is this? The last 31 innings, which is his 5 starts, he's got a 174 ERA with a 3.12 FIP and a 2.96 expected FIP. His walks had always been an issue. He's got that down to 2.32 walks per nine. He's striking out over 10 per nine. The WAR's a little bit lower in .7 because he doesn't eat a lot of innings, but um, really uh, from the time when the Astros started kind of struggling with Javier going down, and they had some other question marks there, and Hunter Brown had like an over 9 ERA, and he's got that down to a 5 ERA now. He's been one of the lone bright spots over that past kind of monthish timetable since adding that cutter. And all the stuff kind of looks really sustainable since he added that to be a pretty good pitcher, which he had always had lofty expectations. It had always been about the walk issues and stuff, but I don't know what it is about him adding the cutter to it that's kind of helped mitigate the walks to a certain extent, because it's not like he did another pitch. He just added this on top of everything else.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Hunter Brown's one of those types of guys that had that prospect pedigree, throws hard, good curveball. He's a guy that you just needed a little bit of seasoning in the big leagues, and for to see him breaking out over the last month, a lot of times adding that pitch that clicks with a guy is what causes that breakout. We saw it with Corbin Burns a while back with his cutter.
Yeah.
And Hunter Brown, I won't say he's on the Corbin Burns path, but he's really paying it off a little bit right now. So speaking of a guy who, for my pick here, a guy who has a pitch that kind of takes him to being really
Yeah.
good, and it's kind of a one pitch thing. My guy that I'm picking is Matt Waldron from the Padres. And you think of the Padres pitching, and you think of Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove and Dylan Cease, but a couple of those guys are hurt, and Dylan Cease has been very good, but you need more than one, and Matt Waldron has been that guy. And the way he's doing it is throwing the knuckleball, and it's been very good. He's very interesting as a knuckleballer because he still throws in the low to mid 90s, which is kind of unusual for a knuckleballer. A lot of times you think of a knuckleballer throwing like 85, and and then throwing knuckleballs like 90% of the time. Well, Waldron doesn't throw all knuckleballs. He throws some fastballs too, and with it being a 90 something mile an hour fastball, it's fairly effective to
Yeah.
change speeds that way. So um, he's been very solid. Over the last month, he's got a 172 ERA with a 242 FIP. He's limited the home run ball. He's not getting squared up very easily. The strikeouts per nine is only 7.1, but his walks per nine is extremely low, which for a knuckleballer is pretty impressive to have that low of a walk per nine rate. So Matt Waldron's been awesome on the season, a 3.66 ERA now. He's really helped mitigate the struggles and loss of Joe Musgrove, and also the loss of Yu Darvish. So definitely a guy that's fun to see him have success. I think baseball is always better when they have a knuckleballer somewhere, and it's good to see one having a lot of success this year.
Yeah, for sure. Baseball it's a lot funner to watch when they have a good knuckleballer, and like you mentioned, he's a lot different. Watching him pitch, it's actually really polarizing because of the speed differential between the knuckleballer and then throwing an actually really effective four-seam fastball that he starts. He basically punches that high in the zone all the time because it keeps about the same arm slot of where the knuckleball comes out of, but then obviously it's just fast and it just throws people off. And he's got a couple other like change up and a slider I want to say too that he mixes in every once in a while. Um, but yeah, the knuckleball fastball combo he's got it's really disgusting because of that being a mid 90s fastball. But you talked about a current Padres pitcher, and I'm going to talk about a Padres pitcher that they traded away in the Juan Soto trade, and that's Mackenzie Gore. We might full on be the Mackenzie Gore breakout season. So far this year, he's had a 3.24 ERA, a 3.70 expected ERA, a FIP of 2.93 with an expected FIP of 3.26, a 1.9 WAR. He's striking out almost 11 people per nine. He's got his walks under 3 per nine now. And if you just look at the past 6 games where he started the past 30 days, 35 innings, a 3.09 ERA, a 3.09 FIP. The expected FIP's a little high at 3.52, but a 0.8 WAR there. And the season numbers, almost directly in line, a 10.29 K per nine and a 2.57 walk per nine. Those are almost identical to his season numbers, in the walks and Ks per nine department there. So I think we might be fully on in the Mackenzie Gore buyout or breakout. I'm ready to buy in. And he's been a really, really good bright spot for that Nationals team. Finally starting to see some of their years of sucking, having to finally start rising up. We saw C.J. Abrams have a little bit of the breakout last year, good start to the season, and now Mackenzie Gore as well, and obviously top prospect James Wood from that trade as well.
Man,
so.
that trade looks really good right now. I mean,
and even Robert Hassel's turned around this year again.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how confident I am in Robert Hassel.
It just looks a lot better than what he was doing last year.
Yeah, he's better than he was last year, sure, but Mackenzie Gore being the main topic here, he's an awesome talent. Obviously he had the pedigree, was a top pick in the draft. I think number 3 overall, right? To the Padres.
Top 5 for sure.
Yeah,
I'll look it up real quick.
He's been, and of course came up, listed as a top prospect this entire time. Dealt with some inconsistencies. He had some pretty significant mechanical just inconsistencies for a while there that really kind of made him a lot more of a risky prospect. But and he still has a little bit of that where he'll go through some stretches where he just loses it for a little while. But if he can be more consistent, and over the last month he's been awesome, and this year so far he's been consistent. If he can be consistent the rest of the year and really show that some of those issues are behind him, this guy's got the talent to be an ace. It kind of reminds me. His career path kind of reminds me a tiny bit of Max Fried right now. So, um, a big drafted by the Padres, top prospect, picked in the top 10 in the draft. Lefty gets traded, and has a few inconsistencies at the beginning, struggles with walks a little bit, but then kind of starts to figure it out. When he figures it out, it's going to click and be, an excellent pitcher. So I definitely look at Mackenzie Gore as that type of guy, and he's very good. It's a good pick.
Yeah, for sure. So that's been some of the guys over the past month that have really had a good month or so. So wanted to highlight them, but that's going to wrap up this episode. You got anything else you wanna close out on here real quick?
I don't think so. I think we did forget one thing to mention earlier, and that is when we were talking about the Astros, they did release Jose Abreu this week, which was kind of interesting. That contract, I think they're eating like $20 million, $30 million.
30. Yeah, 30.
Yeah, so they're eating $30 million, and of course Jose Abreu that was a disaster contract. It was bad. I'll be shocked if he ends up not retiring after that. Like, I don't know what team will give him a shot.
White Sox.
Maybe the White Sox. I mean, seriously though, the White Sox might say, "Hey, come back here, try to rebuild some value." I don't know, but come on a minor league deal, see if you can figure it out at AAA. Some team might do that, but it'll be very interesting to see what the Astros do, because they really, really need a first baseman, and they're kind of on that fringe if they need to start winning now to get back into it, which I think they're capable of. But when you've got when you've got a hole at first base that's filled by right now John Singleton hitting against everybody, including lefties, which is not what you want to see. It's kind of a mess. So
yeah, that'll be a story to watch for sure. But like I said, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Bat Flip Podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you guys back here next week.